Rico Elvis Boy de la Cruz stepped onto the Ireland's Got Talent stage with the kind of quiet courage that only the truly desperate and truly hopeful carry. The lights above him were blinding, far brighter than the sun that beat down on the streets of Cebu where he usually sang for a few coins. His shirt was wrinkled, his faded jeans were the only pair he owned, and his guitar had cracks along its body, held together by layers of old electrical tape. But he held it close like a friend, the only thing that had never abandoned him. The audience murmured, unsure of what to expect. A thin Filipino boy, barefoot on a massive European stage, looked out of place, but something in his eyes made people sit forward. He looked like someone who had walked through storms. Judge Maeve leaned toward her microphone. "Hello, what's your name, love?" "Rico Pa." "Rico de la Cruz," he said softly, the mic amplifying his trembling voice. "From Cebu, Philippines." The crowd clapped politely, surprised. Judge Liam raised an eyebrow. "All the way from the Philippines? And, did you really travel here alone?" Rico nodded once, swallowing hard. "Yes, sir. I sing in the streets back home. I wanted to join this show, because my mother is losing her eyesight. She wants to see me perform on TV before she can't anymore." The audience gasped. You could feel the emotion ripple through the air, as if the entire room exhaled at once. A woman in the second row dabbed her eyes. Even the camera zoomed in slowly, capturing the rising shimmer of tears in Rico's eyes. Judge Fiona leaned forward, her voice soft. "That is a beautiful reason. And what will you be performing?" Rico hugged his guitar tighter. "Elvis Pa. My nene, she loves Elvis. She used to play his songs while cooking." "Whenever you're ready," Maeve whispered, already touched. For a moment, Rico closed his eyes. The stage was silent except for his shaky breath. Then he strummed the first chord, soft, imperfect, but full of heart. When he began singing, "Can't Help Falling in Love," the room changed. His voice wasn't polished, but it carried something rare, a raw, aching sincerity shaped by hunger, by nights sleeping in a bamboo shack, by years watching his mother struggle. By the second line, Liam's lips parted in shock. Fiona's eyes glistened. Maeve covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling as she whispered, "Oh my God, he feels every word." Rico sang as if the stage wasn't in Ireland but in a small Cebu kitchen, singing to the mother he hoped was watching somewhere, squinting through fading vision. His voice cracked near the end, but he kept going, pouring everything he had into the final note. When he finished, the theater sat frozen for a heartbeat, then erupted into applause that shook the floor. Judge Liam stood first, tears openly falling. "You didn't just sing Elvis," he said, voice breaking. "You brought him back." Backstage, Rico sat on an old wooden crate, his guitar resting across his knees like a fragile lifeline. The noise from the audience filtered through the curtains, cheers, chatter, anticipation, but around him, everything felt quiet, almost too quiet. With trembling fingers, he checked the tuning of his cracked guitar. One of the strings buzzed, a reminder that it was barely holding on, much like he had been for most of his life. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, forcing back the fear that was clawing at his chest. As he sat there, memories began to rise, uninvited yet familiar. Cebu smelled of sea salt and smoke, and he remembered standing by the pier with his guitar, the waves slapping the stone wall while he sang to strangers who barely noticed him. Rain often came suddenly, soaking him to the bone, but he never stopped performing. The coins people dropped into his small plastic cup were the only way he could buy rice. Sometimes, even with a full day of singing, he went home with almost nothing. His mother's face flashed into his mind, tired eyes, cloudy and struggling to focus, but always smiling when he sang. Their shack had thin bamboo walls, and every time it rained, water leaked through the roof. Still, she would sit on her old wooden chair and listen to him play Elvis songs, humming softly even when her sight began to dim. He remembered the night he left, her trembling fingers touching his cheeks, telling him not to be afraid. His younger siblings hugged his legs, their eyes wide and unsure, as he walked away carrying only a backpack and his battered guitar. A stage assistant called his name, pulling him back into the present. His heart hammered wildly. This was the semi-finals. This was the performance that could either lift his family out of hardship or send him home empty-handed. He wiped his palms on his jeans and stood up on unsteady legs. When he stepped onto the stage, the lights were harsher than before. The audience seemed even larger. His vision blurred for a moment, and fear rushed in so fast that he felt dizzy. His breathing became shallow. What if he failed? What if his voice cracked? What if this chance, this one miracle he had risked everything for, slipped through his fingers? Judge Fiona noticed the panic in his eyes and suddenly rose from her seat. "Rico," she said gently, "look at me." Her voice was steady, calm, like a hand reaching into the storm he was drowning in. "Remember who you're singing for." Rico's breath hitched. He nodded slowly, grounding himself. He lifted his guitar and began to play the first chords of his Elvis medley. The music wavered for a heartbeat, then strengthened as he sang. His voice carried the hunger of years, the weight of sacrifice, the pain of leaving home, and the love for a mother losing her sight. Each note hit the room like a story, aching and real. The audience rose to their feet halfway through. One judge placed a hand over his heart, overwhelmed. Another wiped tears from her eyes. When the final note faded, the theater erupted, not just with applause, but with something deeper, respect, admiration, and the raw emotion of witnessing a boy who had fought through the darkest struggles to stand in the brightest light. Final night. The biggest stage Rico had ever stepped on stretched before him, shimmering beneath golden lights that felt more like stars than bulbs. The studio was packed, but the air was strangely calm, like everyone was holding their breath. Rico stood at the center, wearing the simple white suit sewn by a neighbor in Cebu who had stayed up for nights stitching every line by hand. The seams weren't perfect, but they carried the love of an entire barangay believing in him. He brushed a thumb over the fabric, grounding himself. He could hear the faint murmur of the crowd, the rustle of banners, the distant echo of cameras adjusting. His heart thudded painfully in his chest. This was it. Everything he had endured, the hunger, the fear, the loneliness, had brought him to this final moment. He tightened his grip on his guitar, but tonight, he wasn't just a street boy from Cebu. Tonight, he was someone his mother could be proud of, someone the world was finally noticing. The host announced his name, and a soft hush fell across the theater. Rico stepped forward, lifting the microphone with shaking hands. "Para sa nanay ko," he whispered. "For everyone who came from nothing." His voice trembled slightly, but he didn't hide it. He let the room feel his truth. The first note of "If I Can Dream" echoed boldly across the stage, and Rico dove into the song with every emotion he had held back for years. His voice rose higher than it ever had before, strong, shaky, then strong again. Each lyric seemed to scrape against the walls of his chest. He wasn't just singing, he was pleading, hoping, praying the world would hear the dream he was fighting for. As he reached the middle of the song, his voice cracked. A small gasp rippled through the audience. Rico froze for half a heartbeat, fear clawing at him. But then he remembered Fiona's words, the faces of his siblings, his mother's fading eyes. He closed his own eyes and pushed forward. The crack in his voice didn't ruin the song, it deepened it. Suddenly the performance wasn't perfect, and because of that, it became beautiful. Judge Maeve stood without even realizing it, hand pressed to her heart. Judge Liam wiped his cheeks openly, tears falling faster with every line. Fiona held her hands clasped tightly, lips trembling as if she could feel every ounce of Rico's pain. Then came the final note. Rico didn't just sing it, he screamed it from the depths of his soul, voice breaking with the weight of every sacrifice he had ever made. The room erupted the second the note faded. People rose to their feet in waves. The applause was thunder. The host choked up, the audience cried, and the judges stood together, giving a rare, powerful golden standing ovation. Confetti exploded overhead as Rico dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered into the mic, barely able to breathe. Ma, nagawa ko.